You know, when you think of Samsung, you probably think of, well, the phone in your pocket, the TV in your living room. They're a true tech giant, the pride of South Korea. But here's the thing. Right now, that titan is facing one of its absolute toughest moments, especially in the super high-stakes world of semiconductors. So the big question is, how did the undisputed king of chips suddenly find itself in a fight for its very life? Well, let's get into it. I mean, for decades, Samsung's chip empire just seemed untouchable, right? A total juggernaut in both making memory and manufacturing chips for others. But now it looks like a series of really tough missteps and some brutal, brutal competition are threatening to bring that whole thing crumbling down. Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration. For over 30 years, that's exactly what Samsung was, the undisputed king. But now, that crown is seriously, genuinely at risk. And you better believe the shockwaves from that are being felt all across the tech world. And look, this isn't just some vague feeling that things are off. We're talking real numbers. That is the amount of market value that just vanished for Samsung in late 2024. It's a real, tangible crisis. Billions of dollars wiped out because the market is starting to ask, does Samsung still have what it takes? So that's really the core question we're going to tackle here. How on earth did a company that was so far ahead of the pack suddenly find itself on the back foot in this global chip race? It's a crazy story. Okay, so to really get what's gone wrong, you first have to appreciate just how high Samsung climbed. We need to talk about the golden age because their rise wasn't just successful, it was utterly dominant. I mean, look at this journey. Samsung's rise was just meteoric. They jumped into the memory chip business in the 80s, which was a super bold move at the time. And by the 90s, bam, they were #1 in the world. This success fueled this massive ambition, leading to their Vision 2030 plan, which was basically a plan to conquer the entire semiconductor world. And for a while, it looked like they were doing it. They even announced the world's first 3-nanometer chip back in 2022, a move that was supposed to leave all their rivals just eating their dust. But that's where the ambition hit a pretty harsh reality. The first major battlefront where things started to go wrong was in the logic chip foundry business. Now, that's just the fancy term for when companies like, say, Apple or NVIDIA, who design their own amazing chips but don't have factories, pay someone else to actually build them. And wow, just look at this gap. It is absolutely staggering. Taiwan's TSMC basically has a stranglehold on the market, with 2/3 of the entire pie. And Samsung, the company that wanted to be #1, they're sitting at just 7.7%. That's not just second place. That is a distant second. So what happened? How did they lose so much ground? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was kind of like a perfect storm, a combination of 3 really critical issues that just completely unraveled their ambitions. All right, first up, the tech itself, and something called yield. So Samsung made this huge announcement. They were the first to 3-nanometer chips, a massive engineering achievement. But here's the catch. Being first on paper means nothing if you can't actually make the things reliably. The yield, that's the percentage of working chips you get from each silicon wafer, was apparently painfully low. Think of it like this. If you bake a batch of 100 cookies, but only 30 of them are edible, you've got a yield problem. And that's exactly what scared customers away. Why would you trust your most important product to a factory that can't get it right? And the consequences of that? Well, they were severe. You had a full-on customer exodus. We're talking the biggest names in tech. Qualcomm took its flagship Snapdragon chips and went back to TSMC after their Samsung-made ones had issues. NVIDIA did the same for its next-gen GPUs. And Apple, the biggest prize in the whole game, they haven't used Samsung for their main iPhone chips since way back in 2015. One by one, the big fish swam away. And finally, there's this really fundamental issue of trust. See, TSMC is what's called a pure-play foundry. All they do is build chips for other people. They don't compete with their customers. But Samsung? They're this massive, integrated giant. They make chips for others, but they also design their own chips and sell their own phones that compete directly with their customers' products. So put yourself in Apple's shoes for a second. Are you really going to hand over the secret sauce for your next iPhone chip to the same company that makes the Galaxy? It's a huge potential conflict of interest, and that's a tough hurdle to overcome. Okay, so losing ground in the foundry business is bad enough, right? But what happened next? This was something nobody saw coming. It was almost unthinkable. Samsung got completely blindsided in its own kingdom, the memory chip market that it had ruled with an iron fist for 30 years. And here it is. In a shift so big you could call it an earthquake in the tech world, Samsung actually lost its #1 spot in DRAM revenue. And not to some giant, but to its smaller rival, SK Hynix. How? What could possibly cause such a sudden upset? The answer is just 2 letters: AI. So this whole AI revolution, it runs on a very special kind of memory. It's called HBM, or high bandwidth memory. The easiest way to think about it is like super premium, high-octane fuel for the incredibly powerful processors and GPUs that power AI. It's stacked vertically. It sits right next to the processor, and it is absurdly fast. You absolutely need it for training those huge AI models we're all talking about. And this is where the story gets really interesting. SK Hynix basically saw the future. They made this incredibly bold bet on HBM technology way, way back in 2013. They pioneered it. So when the AI boom suddenly exploded, who was ready? Who was the key supplier for NVIDIA's all-powerful AI chips? SK Hynix. They were ready with the latest and greatest HBM chips just as demand went through the roof, and they captured almost the entire market. And Samsung, the king of memory, they were caught completely flat-footed. Of course, Samsung scrambled to catch up, but it was just too little too late. By the time they were getting their act together, SK Hynix was already shipping its new AI memory in massive volumes. And Samsung's hope of getting a piece of that sweet NVIDIA pie, well, as Bloomberg put it, it was simply snuffed out by its delays. What a shocking miscalculation. So let's recap. They faltered in the foundry business. They got blindsided in the AI memory boom. The big question now is, can this fallen giant actually stage a comeback? What's the plan for the future? Well, you can be sure Samsung is not giving up. They're going all in. They are pouring billions upon billions into brand new factories, like the one in Taylor, Texas. And they're pinning all their hopes on leapfrogging the competition with their next big thing, the 2-nanometer process. The strategy is pretty clear. Create a chip so good, so advanced, that those customers who left will have no choice but to come crawling back.
And that really leaves us with the billion-dollar question, doesn't it? It is a massive, high-stakes gamble. After a series of really painful stumbles, can Samsung finally execute flawlessly? Can they nail this next-gen tech and claw their way back to the top of the chip industry? The answer, whatever it is going to define the future of this tech titan for years to come.